Attorney General of the Federation orders Department of State Services to hand over Showore's case. Nnamdi Kanu loses at ECOWAS court. In international news, UK Conservative Party wins election, Brexit on course. And in sport, Tanzania former FA boss guilty of corruption.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatuji. The case of the Revolution Now movement's convener and Sahara Reporters publisher Omoyele Sowore has taken a new turn. Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice Abubakar Malami has ordered the Department of State Services (DSS) to hand over the case. Malami gave the directive in a statement on Friday. DSS was also ordered to forward the Sowore case file to Malami's office. The file is in respect of the charge pending against Sowore before the Federal High Court in Abuja. Malami reiterated the federal government's commitment to respecting the sanctity of the rule of law, protecting the virtues of human rights, and ensuring speedy dispensation of justice in the matter. He has also directed the Federal Justice Ministry to immediately take over the prosecution of all charges against Sowore. Malami specifically directed that the prosecution must be in line with constitutional provisions. The letter requesting the case transfer was sent to the DSS on Wednesday. A 7-count treasonable felony charge is pending against Sowore and his co-defendant, Olawale Bakari. Turkish Airlines will not be able to fly in and out of Nigeria from Monday. The Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority has suspended the airline because of what it says were persistent baggage delays. NCAA's letter to the airline warns it will remain suspended until it is ready to use the right aircraft size for flights into Nigeria, aircrafts that would bring passengers and their checked-in luggage at the same time. NCAA says the problem has worsened in the last 2 weeks, where the most recent Turkish Airlines arrived in the country with only 15% of passengers checked in baggage. The Aviation Authority says these failures by the airline have created serious crashes at the airports whenever passengers arrive and their luggages did not. NCAA says it has held many meetings with the airline over the issue but did not yield any solution. The Indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, has issued a tough statement against the Nigerian army in response to the army's charge that the group had doctored a recent video that showed Boko Haram insurgents killing Nigerian soldiers. The group's spokesman, Imam Powerful, said in a statement on Thursday, the Nigerian army has belittled itself in the eyes of the world by involving IPOB in what it calls the army's futile efforts to deflect attention from its failed efforts to fight terrorism. IPOB denied any connection with the video. Meanwhile, IPOB leader Nnamdi Kanu has suffered a loss at the ECOWAS court, where his case against Nigeria has been dismissed. Kanu has urged the Nigerian government to court over what it says were torture, assault, and subjection to inhuman treatment allegedly meted to him by security operatives who arrested him in 2015. ECOWAS Regional Court ruled on Thursday Kanu failed to prove his case against the federal government. Kanu's request for $800 million monetary compensation was also dismissed. We reported earlier this week that the federal government has launched an open treasury portal to fight against corruption. Minister of State for Niger Delta has explained that the initiative will help not only in curbing corruption, but in also ensuring transparency in government. Kelechi Emekalam has more.
To once again propel government's fight against corruption, especially in the public sector. All of its business transactions would now be in public domain, and that's through a new portal, opentreasury.gov.ng.
Cementing government commitment to improving governance and supplementing the recently launched whistleblower policy and equipping the general population with the tools they need to report financial wrongdoing.
The policy was formulated in line with government's stand to fight corruption, but to also ensure conformance with global best practices to ensure that there is transparency and accountability, but to also equip the citizens to hold both all levels of government to account.
Nigeria is tagged one of the most corrupt countries in the world. The Corruption Perception Index puts Nigeria at 144 out of 175 least corrupt nations. According to a report by audit firm PricewaterhouseCoopers, if not dealt with quickly, Nigeria could lose up to 37% of its GDP to corruption by 2030. The cost is equivalent to $2,000 per person living in Nigeria at the time. Fighting corruption was one of President Muhammadu Buhari's campaign promises, so the policy serves to keep government workers in check.
Public officers to act in awareness of the reality that information about their fiduciary responsibilities and actions will be easily assessed by not only law enforcement agencies but also the general public.
All government establishments have a 3-month deadline to comply with the policy. A team made up of government and civil society would monitor and ensure compliance.
Coming up, African stories. Zimbabwean striking doctors trickle back to work. And later, international news. UK Conservative Party wins big in national elections, keeping Brexit on course.
I better go. I feel like saying the friend don't take time finish. Push!
When they're supposed to buy for they will not buy. We look here. He still has 200 naira for he will still buy.
Oh, got to 200. You can put your usual bill.
Yes, but you go add 888. Join now.
It's a big level.
Is it not 200 you give that lady?
Now 888 be that.
888 now the new AWOOF. Recharge with *888 *PIN# to enjoy 5 times AWOOF from MTN to call any network. You fit also enjoy am on top VTU. Just ask your vendor for AWOOF for you.
Conductor, where my naira change?
Office man, you don't forget money self.
Oh, forget. You go even hide 888 join that shit. Give my check, bro.
Welcome back. This is CNN News. Now to African stories. Zimbabwe has been experiencing labor pains in its medical sector for some time now, but it appears striking and sacked doctors who have stayed off work for some time have turned off their time off. Some are trickling back to work. Faraya and Wakotuya has that story.
A combination of a presidential moratorium and a 5,000 Zimbabwe dollar, about $300 per month allowance offered by a philanthropic foundation have made a breakthrough that's brought some doctors who've been on strike since September 6th back to the wards.
We would like to confirm that some of our doctors are now reporting for duty and the hospital is still monitoring the situation. So at the moment we are unable actually to provide the actual figures of doctors who are coming as we are continuing to monitor.
Parire Nyatwa, the country's largest referral hospital, had been forced to turn patients away during the protracted industrial action. It slowly resumed some of the services that had been stopped. Davin Ngwerume says his friend was admitted overnight after being involved in a car accident.
When we came here last night, we didn't expect to get any help. We thought our friend would just be left in pain for the whole night, but a doctor came promptly and attended to him. He was given tablets for pain and admitted overnight. Today, he will be seen by an oral specialist since he lost some of his teeth.
Services at public hospitals aren't back to normal just yet, but there's finally light at the end of the tunnel that this long-running crisis may be resolved soon.
President Emmerson Mnangagwa recently hinted that some of the striking doctors are being sponsored to destabilize the health sector, which is why they have turned down offers to return to work while negotiations over their demands continue. Government has committed to addressing the doctors' grievances relating to drugs, medical equipment, and their welfare. Doctors want their salaries to be reviewed in line with inflation and the US dollar exchange rate, both of which have been rapidly increasing.
Ethiopia is hopeful the International Monetary Fund would approve its $3 billion loan requests to fund reforms in the country. The IMF may just do that as it has reached a staff-level agreement with Ethiopia on the loan package. Koleta Wanjoy is in Addis Ababa.
Ethiopia is fit for a financial package worth $2.9 billion. That is the initial assessment of the International Monetary Fund. As it awaits final approval by the fund's executive board, Ethiopia says this is a great show of confidence in its economic reforms.
We want to make sure we unleash the full potential of the economy and also resolve some of the key macro challenges. One being foreign currency shortage. Right? And people are asking, in terms of export, you're not doing well, maybe because there are some logistic challenges that require forex intervention, or some of our manufacturers are not not producing full capacity, maybe 40-50% because of some forex shortage. So what this resource does is help us unlock the full potential of the economy.
The country is also tackling poor managed state-owned enterprises and a weak private sector.
Broadly speaking, both the private sector and the public sector side, there's much work to do. Private sector is still very young and small in Ethiopia. It needs to grow up very fast because the world is coming here if we don't go to it.
Ethiopia hopes to change its economy in 3 years. Ethiopia says it needs up to $10 billion to successfully execute its economic reforms. Its biggest challenge, however, is accumulated debts of over $52 billion. Most of this is from external borrowing. Ethiopia's Ministry of Finance says its economy still has room to borrow loans, but wants to be careful not to accumulate debt.
When we unveiled ongoing economic reform, we've identified sources of finance. And we said specifically, we would like to get more grants, more concessional loans, more private sector investments, more export receipts, and so on. I mean, this kind of healthy source of finance. And that's what we are mobilizing now. So in a sense, our constraint is only on commercial debt.
Already, plans are underway to invite 3 new investors into the country's telecommunications sector. Consultations have also begun to open up 13 state-owned sugar companies to foreign investment. The economic reforms are the initiative of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, who took over leadership in April 2018. He has promised to make Ethiopia more attractive for investment and in turn create more jobs and inclusive growth.
Uganda has tested its first electric bus, which could see its capital city, Kampala, take it up as a means of transport. Besides easing congestion, the bus is environmentally friendly. And Leon Sionj reports on the 90 city's first road test.
The mega switch from diesel engines to an electric-powered ride. This is Uganda's Kayola electric bus.
It's a low-flow entry city bus. Low flow meaning somebody can just jump on, hop off without needing stairs.
Spacious inside, equipped with security cameras and screens, the bus seems comfortable. It can carry up to 90 people and cover a distance of 300 kilometers with a single charge of electric power. The bus is out on yet another road trip, and this could be the longest so far. A 130-kilometer journey from the capital to the central part of the country. Several road tests have already been done to guarantee it is roadworthy. Officials say this will be a big step in the city's plans to go green.
We will actually undertake a 12-month study with the 2 buses that we will have built to best understand in what way can we introduce electric buses to urban centers in Uganda and beyond in the sub-Saharan region.
City residents can expect to start riding on the buses by 2021. The allure of riding a bus already has some excited.
It has been my dream. I've heard of Kira Motors, but I've not I haven't got an opportunity to walk into it and board it. You understand? So it's something that I cannot wait for it.
The Ugandan car company Kira Motors Corporation plans on assembling many more.
When we return, international news. UK Conservative Party wins big in national elections, keeping Brexit on course. And later, sport. Tanzania FA former boss found guilty of corruption.
You are watching ANN. Somewhere in the world, every second of the day, news is happening. And of course, Nigeria is bustling with news day and night. That is why ANN doesn't sleep. Our eyes are peeled, wide open, so no story escapes our radar. We stay abreast of world events and happenings at home. We keep you up to the minute in the world of sports. We give you information to stay on top of your investments and all the hard facts you need to navigate your day. If you miss us on air, you can keep up to date on our website and on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. We are ANN, Africa News Network. We do news right in a truly African spirit.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson has led his Conservative Party to victory in one of the country's key elections in decades. Analysts say the result is a vindication of Johnson's strategy to campaign on a single promise to get Brexit done. By early Friday morning, the Conservatives had secured 364 of the 650 seats in the House of Parliament. Labour has 203 seats.
This is an election where historic party loyalties were put to the test, and despite the wintry weather, there were long queues at some polling stations.
I voted for the Liberal Democrats because I would like to remain in the EU. I'm not particularly interested in Brexit. I voted for Labour.
The Conservative Party has won a significant victory, giving them their largest majority for more than 30 years. Labour has suffered its worst defeat since the 1930s.
The House Judiciary Committee has on Friday voted to approve the articles of impeachment against President Trump. Earlier, the U.S. House Judiciary Committee postponed till today a vote on 2 impeachment charges against President Donald Trump. The decision was taken by Democratic Committee Chairman Jerry Nadler after 2 days of acrimonious debate. Republicans had attempted to stall the process they had described as an illegitimate attack on the president. It is now almost certain that President Trump will become the 3rd U.S. president in history to be impeached. Trump has denied any wrongdoing. On Friday morning, the committee immediately began voting on the first article, abuse of power. The members, 23 Democrats and 17 Republicans, voted against party affiliation. U.S. President Trump has signed off on a Phase 1 trade deal with China, averting Sunday's introduction of a new wave of U.S. tariffs on about $160 billion of consumer goods from the Asian nation. The deal presented to Trump by trade advisors includes a promise by the Chinese to buy more U.S. agricultural goods. Officials also said they discussed possible reductions in existing duties on Chinese products. The terms have been agreed, but the legal test has not yet been finalized. Trump has changed his mind on dues with China before. Negotiators have been working on the terms of the Phase 1 deal for months. After the president announced in October, the two nations had reached an agreement that could be put on paper within weeks. The U.S. has added a 25% duty on about $250 billion of Chinese products and a 15% levy on another $110 billion US of its imports over the course of a roughly 20-month trade war. The European Union has left Poland out of a 2050 climate neutrality agreement that will see carbon emissions reduced to 0 by 2050. This agreement came after hours of haggling with 3 Eastern European member states that demanded more funds for economic transition and support for nuclear power. European Council new President Charles Michel said the bloc was committed to the 2015 target, but that one member state at this stage cannot commit to implement this objective. The conclusions also acknowledged the need to respect the rights of EU member states to decide on their own energy mix. If the agreement had passed unanimously, Europe would have become the biggest economic bloc yet to set a goal of becoming carbon neutral by 2050. Polish negotiators had reportedly pushed for a climate neutrality date of 2070 instead of 2050. Poland relies on coal for almost 80% of its electricity. Still ahead, sport. Tanzania FA former boss guilty of corruption. Please stay with us. Welcome back. This is CNN News. Now to sport. Former president of the Tanzania Football Federation and FIFA committee member Jamal Malinzi has been found guilty on one of 20 corruption charges. Malinzi was facing embezzlement and money laundering charges but was found guilty of document forgery. The judge ordered Malinzi to pay a fine of approximately $220 or serve a 2-year jail term. He had been on remand prison since June 2017 following his arrest by the country's Prevention and Combating of Corruption Bureau. Although Malinzi has agreed to pay the fine, he maintained his innocence throughout the case and claimed the charges were malicious. World boxing champion Anthony Joshua has been ordered by the World Boxing Organization to defend his WBO title against mandatory challenger Alexander Usyk. The British boxer won his rematch against Andy Ruiz Jr. last weekend to reclaim the WBA, IBF and WBO belts he had lost to the Mexican in New York. WBA president has stated that Joshua must take on Ukrainian Usyk within 180 days of Saturday's wins. If he does not agree to meet the Ukrainian former cruiserweight king before January the 10th, he will be forced to vacate his belt, and that could set back his hopes of adding the WBC crown.